Hey Fight fans, I'm Sarah Davis and you're watching Fight News Now Extra. Coming up next, there are some matches in the making and we're telling you all about them. Plus our MMA panel will give you their 2 cents on what's happening this weekend. So don't go anywhere, let's get to the Newsmakers. Strikeforce's lightweight champion Gilbert Melendez says he's coming for the UFC's 155 title holder Benson Henderson. El Nino recently called Henderson out, saying that he'll answer twice as hard to anything Henderson dishes out. Melendez is hoping to make the transition over to the UFC in the new year. And earlier this year, we were supposed to see the UFC's Frank Mir cross over to Strikeforce to battle fellow heavyweight Daniel Cormier. That was until Mir injured his knee. But guess what? Mir is still interested in fighting Cormier. Check this out.
I know he has the last fight in the Strikeforce, and when it comes over the UFC, I already obligated myself and made an agreement to fight him. And obviously, through physical things I couldn't control, it didn't happen. I'm more than happy to make good on my promise and and challenge him. And it'd be great to be able to fight him in the UFC and not have to go over to the Strikeforce.
And another matchup we could see is between England's Dan Hardy and American Matt Brown, who knocked out Mike Swick at UFC on Fox 5 last weekend. Brown called out Hardy on Twitter post-fight, aiming for a match in Japan at UFC on Fuel TV 8. The Outlaw said he's down to face the Immortal, so now it's just up to the UFC to book it. Those are your latest Newsmakers. Let's send it over to our MMA panel with John Pollock, John Ramdine, and Robin Black. And guys, we've got TUF 16 going down this Saturday.
Yes, Friday night Australia, Saturday night Vegas. 2 nights of fights for the UFC. And the TUF finale, you look at this main card, some really exciting fights here. At the top, we have Matt Mitrione, who's taking the spot of Coach Shane Carwin to take on Roy Nelson here. I think someone likely going to sleep in this fight.
Yeah, and I have a feeling it is not going to be Roy Nelson. Roy Nelson has a granite chin, and I just think he's far too experienced for Matt Mitrione. Mitrione, I think, is a very talented guy. We know he's an athlete. He's big. He likes to punch, but we saw in that Czech-Congo fight, if you can get this fight down to the ground, you can exploit his weakness there.
We touched on this a little bit on 3 rounds this week, and Matt Mitrione is a bit of a dicey character. Like, he was a guy who just had so much upside and so much potential coming out of the NFL, looking really good on The Ultimate Fighter, and all of a sudden he made some weird career moves, fired his manager, complained about sponsorship, turned down a fight, fought Czech-Congo and lost. This is a great chance for him if he lives up to that potential, if he ends up being as great a fighter as we saw, and all of a sudden he can finish off Big Roy Nelson, it means something. If he doesn't, it's just another in a bad series of steps in his career, maybe. So it's interesting.
It'll be a telling fight. Like, he has not competed since that Congo fight all the way back October 2011, and now also hooking up with the Black Zillions. We can see what kind of impact that has on its game. But you're talking about 2 heavyweights, Nelson 36, Mitrione 34. Mitrione got into this game really late, and coming out of the NFL, it was like he's been playing catch-up his whole career to try and get to that level where he's being thrown there into this heavyweight pool of guys right now.
It just comes down to what has he been doing over the last year. You talk about the Black Zillion camp, Matt Mitrione, he's an athlete, very, very coachable, so hopefully he spent that time over the last year to really hone his skills, to learn the jiu-jitsu game, to learn all the aspects he can about mixed martial arts, because like you mentioned, kind of a late bloomer, and he needs all the help he can get right now.
Yeah, and if you put your ear to the ground really well, and you've got a few friends that train in different places, and we hear some rumblings out of the Black Zillion camp sometimes, not always publicly, sometimes just quietly, and they'll talk about who's in there. And if you're doing a good job as an analyst, you don't give away everything. You let your sources tell you some information you can use without telling the whole world, because then you end up with some cool stuff. We haven't heard a peep out of the Black Zillion camp about Matt Mitrione, and that's telling to some degree. Yet at the same time, I think what makes this so interesting, like you said, they're heavyweights, so it's great. Somebody goes out and hammers each other in the face. But what is interesting, if you see this 34-year-old former football player come out here and just bash and smash and KO Big Roy Nelson, all of a sudden we all go, none of us know what we're talking about again. And here's another heavyweight to watch.
2 other heavyweights we'll be watching on Saturday night. Shane Del Rosario, who returned this past May after that horrific car accident in 2011. He is going to be taking on Pat Barry. Always get fireworks out of this guy. He's lost 3 of his last 4, but one of those heavyweights that is just always going to have a job here in the UFC. Such an exciting fighter. But this is another one, John. Does this one get out of the first round?
Again, I don't know if I agree with you in the fact that he will always have a job. You have to correct your deficiencies. And we've seen from Pat Barry his deficiency is that ground game. And I think Shane Del Rosario, we know that he's a former WBC heavyweight Muay Thai champion, so I'm sure he'll be more than willing to stand and trade in this fight. But I think why do that when you can take this fight down to the ground and exploit Pat Barry's weaknesses on the ground, get a big victory, because Del Rosario didn't look great in his last performance.
Yeah, Pat, this is going to sound weird, but Pat Barry is sort of the UFC's equivalent of an enforcer in hockey. The enforcer in hockey has a crappy job, and it's because he's going to go out and have to create some excitement and change some momentum and put on a big show. And although everybody fights in the UFC, a guy like Pat Barry comes out, leads with his chin, puts his hands up, and starts trading with guys almost in that same way for that purpose of lighting everybody up and exciting everybody. You don't have a long career like that. You risk all kinds of injuries, and eventually, now you go maybe 1-4 in your last 5 fighting that way. It's a long, risky, thankless job, but we love watching guys like that fight.
And let's touch on the finals. Welterweights, Mike Ricci, a transplanted welterweight for this season of The Ultimate Fighter, taking on Colton Smith. Is this Mike Ricci's tournament to lose?
Yes. Mike Ricci is the man. When your training partners are George St. Pierre and Rory McDonald, I think you're in pretty good hands.
Yeah, Mike Ricci is going to smash this guy. I'm sorry. That's one of the issues with TUF is you bring in a monster and you bring other young, interesting guys. In the real world outside of TUF, you would never put these guys together. One is much better than the other.
And as we mentioned, this is Ricci competing in a weight class above what he traditionally fights at, and he'll be going back down to 155. I expect Mike Ricci to look very good on Saturday night.
Oh, yeah, and it sounds like he's going to have a solid career ahead of him, right, if he wins this? All right, thanks, guys. Okay, and don't forget, when you're not catching up with those 3 amigos and me, you can go to our website, fightnetwork.com, stay up to date on all the latest combat sports news. There's a ton of content on there, and we're always updating it with press releases, articles, and videos. All right, stay tuned next for more Fight News Now Extra.